Hello and welcome to Social Media Business. This is a podcast, a vodcast, a show about social media and mostly business, although we do get a little personal from time to time. Talking of personal, here's the very personable Dave from Dave Early edition. Dave Early.
Hello. Hi everyone. Welcome to the show today.
So I've asked people to put some questions in and let us know what they're thinking, but what would you say was the big news, like the biggest news of the week in media to do with social media, or in social media to do with media, or in social media to do with social media, or media to do with media?
The biggest news of the week that everyone in social media is talking about is Facebook's emotional contagion research that they conducted in 2011. 2012, that is. And so, for anyone who hasn't seen it, Laurel's got it up there. And basically what they did was manipulate the feeds of almost 700,000 people, so in a mass user-base research, to show them either more negative or more positive news items. And not news as in news media, but just what they call stories, which is updates from friends or family or news items, things like that. And the purpose of the research was to see if people who saw more positive things would then respond positively, or people who saw more negative things would respond negatively. So essentially, if you're shown more positive sounding things, does it make you happier and more positive? Or if you're shown more negative things, does it make you unhappier and more likely to post negative things? Or, as they said, less likely to interact with Facebook. So the whole tweaking of the algorithm that happens with Facebook all the time is their attempt to keep people making more interactions. So more likes, more comments, more shares. So that's why they might tweak the algorithm to show more high quality news than spam content in feeds, because they want people to use Facebook more. So that was their reasoning, was that they wanted to study if people were less likely to use Facebook as often as they would like if they saw a certain type of news. So
okay, what was the outcome? Anything interesting from the study? Before we go into the value systems and the ethical judgments and all that sort of stuff, what was the outcome?
So the outcome was fairly minimal. They thought, the outcome was that yes, if people saw positive stuff, they might change their Facebook interactions to post more positive things themselves, and if they received more negative stuff in their feed from Facebook, they were more likely to post negative things themselves.
I thought it was a minuscule difference, that it wasn't a big difference.
Yeah, so the difference was one word for every 1,000 words or something like that was likely to be more negative than average or previously, or something like that.
More negative or positive, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that.
Tell me something. Do you think they needed to do a study for this? Because, I just was thinking I think the Sunday before, I logged into Facebook, and it was all bad news. A friend of mine's 6-year-old daughter had passed away. It wasn't we sort of knew it was going to happen, and he was blogging her whole cancer trip, but you kind of just went. And then somebody posted up that they were taking their dog to the vet to be put down, which I know isn't equal, but still made me go, And somebody else put something else up, and then there was something about refugees dying, and
Yeah.
I just had a really miserable Sunday. And I'm just not sure you need a focus group, Facebook focus group to know that if you dump bad news on people, that they're going to feel miserable.
Yeah. And it was interesting that it was actually like there've been previous academic or research independent of Facebook and independent of being able to tweak the algorithm to affect directly what people get, but there have been independent smaller research studies that have done similar that we've seen in the news in the last 12 months that have said, and just polling people on social media where they've said, yep, what you see on social media affects your emotions. So exactly like you just said, you don't need Facebook to manipulate it to find that out. You can just ask people. They see something sad, they react to it. So I found it.
Hey, I just a non sequitur, but did you know that when a whole lot of soap operas in America went into whenever they finish up, close it up, I can't think of what the term's called, the end game stuff, they put out one of the big studios put out a press release and said, 8 out of 10 soap operas are folding, and we directly attribute this to Facebook, and that people are getting those emotional highs and lows that they get from engaging with soap opera fictional characters. They're now getting it from Facebook stories, from friends. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. That's very interesting.
I should try and find it and put it up on the screen. But yeah, all right, go on. So you're talking about studies that have already happened.
Yes, and so we already had user research, I guess, personal from people's personal responses to academic questions about a study about how did your interactions and see this, how did it make you feel, that sort of thing. But the results of those would often be, so yes, social media can make you happier or sadder. So it was interesting that the premise of the Facebook research that the Facebook researchers have said is that they thought, the reason they did it, they thought that if people saw too much positive stuff, they would feel worse about themselves because they were left out. Which doesn't...
Oh, yeah. I mean, I hate it when I see my friends having a great time and getting wonderful jobs and going on wonderful holidays. I just hate it for them, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So that was an interesting aspect to me of their reasoning for that. Like, we know...
I was being sarcastic. Were you?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if I should go #sarcasm.
Sark mark. I understood.
I'm wondering if the audience did, but it doesn't matter because they'll get it later. Can I just put something up on the screen while you're talking? Do you mind,
yeah.
Dave? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing I want to show, and then you can go on when I've shown these two, is that Facebook has 2 really interesting pages. Actually, Facebook has about 60 official pages. So when companies ask me, oh, how many Facebook pages should we have? I go, oh, Facebook's got 60. You could start there, just to really scare them.
Yeah.
But Facebook.com/data is the Facebook data science area, and this is where they usually work with other pages and research groups and come out with all the big data analytics. So, who's checking in on Facebook, and they'll reveal, the big statistics behind that and any studies that are going on. And the other one is that Facebook runs an official academics page, facebook.com/academics, and this is where they're meant to be advising, or they try to advise academics and educational institutions on how to use Facebook. So sometimes if you want to be a bit snoopy, keeping an eye on those two is a good way to go. So,
yep.
can I just say, Dave. I've been at academic conferences. I actually was in Portugal a couple of years ago as a judge at an academic conference on papers to do with big data and social media and things like that. So all these studies come before you, and you have to look and read through all their studies, and then you have to sort of make a call and have discussion points and stuff around it. And one of the things that shocks me about academic studies, and maybe it's because they don't have any money, but sometimes their studies are of 24 people. And
Yeah.
so they get 24 students, so you've got a target market segment. You don't have the big data of 1.1 billion people on Facebook. You have 24 students that go to your university, and whatever the typical marketing segment of that university is, it's an elite uni or it's a working class uni or whatever. And then they ask them questions, and it's all declarative. So it's, how often do you study a day? Well, I don't know, 12 hours, all that kind of rubbish that students give you.
Yeah.
And this study is so interesting to me because beyond everything else, and we'll go into some of the other areas, is that academics just get access. Research groups, focus groups are tiny. News poll, Gallup poll are like, 1,500 people, and you're trying to analyze through declarative. You call somebody up at 7 o'clock at night when they're cooking dinner, and you go, who are you going to vote for?
Yeah.
And if they don't say a rude word and hang up on you, they just, whatever's on the news that night, or if they're on the fence, they'll just come up with anything. But if you can watch their behaviours closely for 30 days, what news items are they sharing, what are they doing? It's behavioural analytics, it's not declarative. And I think this is such an interesting shift across the board in study. Ethics aside, but what do you think? Do you think this is a new place for academic studies to go?
Oh, absolutely. And it's like, getting access to, the Twitter fire hose data, like having access to everything. It's the same if you had access to Facebook without identifiers, Facebook data without personal identifiers and things like that, that can maintain privacy for people, then absolutely, like, the research and the data, the size of it is amazing, and the ability for researchers and academics to access that to learn more about behavior is really a very powerful thing and very useful. And so in that sense, I don't have a problem with it.
How do you feel about the fact that that stuff's all freely available now?
Which stuff?
Oh, I guess marketing target demographic. They're not even demographic. They're persona avatar numbers. Like for instance, if I go into, I know I've shown this before, but if I go into the Facebook ads area, I can get into the big data stuff. So I can say, show me 13 to 21 year olds who are, I don't know, who are pregnant, in Australia, and get the number of people that Facebook is certain are pregnant. And this isn't declarative. They didn't have to put up that they were pregnant. They just had to exhibit behaviours which showed that they were expecting. I mean, I've chosen a really young demographic here, 13 to 21, but you could, go in and say, I don't know, older groups or younger, and, how many girls in Wagga Wagga like Lady Gaga and rollerblading, and get the exact numbers.
Actually,
I find...
Just out of pure voyeuristic interest, can you change that age to, say, 17? 15. Make it 15. And see if the reach...
15 or 15 to 21?
No, 13 to 15.
It's under 1,000. It always says fewer than 1,000.
Fewer than 1,000.
Yeah. In
Right.
other words, it's telling you you're wasting your money if you advertise. Anytime you see fewer than 1,000, it's saying you're wasting your money.
Yeah. But with all of this stuff, like, you would hope that you could get the same sort of results out of ABS data and stuff like that. So it's not that.
How would they collect it?
Well, not to that specificity, but the in the realm of data and what groups people belong to, or breaking it down and segmenting it. You know, ABS has a lot of stuff that has previously been used in the past to work out demographics and locations and things like that. But
Yeah, but that's so old-fashioned now. I mean, you know,
I
if I
know,
wanted
but
to advertise, it doesn't matter who with. I'd walk in and go, I want to just target I want to target my 3 marketing segments. I want to target women of this age who like gardening and reading this magazine and watching this show, and I want to target guys who drive this kind of car and live in these suburbs. And any media company that can't give me that is, I mean, isn't this why Google is so terrified of losing keyword-based ads to persona ads, social profile ads? I don't know. I
think so.
You're going to disagree with me, Dave.
Well, we agree on things, and have we disagreed on anything yet? I think also the active user
You
base.
said you don't have a LinkedIn profile for your organization.
Yeah, but my last day's tomorrow, so I don't need to worry about that anymore.
Oh, yes, it's tomorrow. Are you excited?
Yeah, yeah.
And I just realized the shelves behind you are empty.
Empty. Boxes on the floor.
Oh, Dave, you're leaving.
But I'm coming to Sydney.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And you're going to you're still in my virtual space, so that's fine.
Although I don't know how long before I'll have internet access. Hey?
I beg your pardon?
I don't know how long before I'll have internet access, so might have to find a good library connection or something.
Oh, yeah. This is an opportunity to check your neighbour's Wi-Fi hacks.
That's right.
I didn't just say that, did I? Okay.
Just drive around
I live in the bush, so if our internet goes down, we don't have anybody else's we can go and hack.
Yeah.
Back to, so, you know, one of the things I think Facebook offers is this, I guess, behavioral analytics rather than decorative. So if you ask people, how do you like your coffee, they say rich, dark, aromatic, and they do all the advertising stuff to you. Malcolm Gladwell talked about this, and he said, if you put a coffee machine at the back of the room and a camera over it, sneakily watching them, they make wheat, milky lattes, you know, skim lattes, which is me. So asking people stuff versus what they actually do is different. And I think, you know, one of the things with media is that you ask people, what media do you consume? And they say, you know, some tome, erstwhile tome, like, I don't know, what's a grown-up newspaper, Dave?
A grown-up newspaper?
Yeah.
The Guardian? I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Something serious. The Australian, for instance, the national newspaper, they read the Australian.
Yes.
But if you look at what they're sharing on Facebook, it's all Kim Kardashian gossip news or something. So, you know,
well, to their
focus
credit,
groups and surveys and polls can really be craptastic, I think.
To their credit, I haven't seen the Australian do that much. But for example, there is for a few years been a discussion or angst among some people about the dissonance between the Sydney Morning Herald sort of print brand and seriousness and the digital side, and whether whether it connects as well as it should, or whether the digital side, and someone at Fairfax will probably slam me for this now, but it was a discussion a few years ago about
look, it works with companies too. That dissonance, we call it the brand voice, and they shift their brand voice depending on the platforms, and it's so confusing to the customer. Like, for instance, NAB has a serious banking voice, one of our banks, big five banks, but they also have this cheeky brand voice that they use from time to time, and it just comes across as so schizo.
Yeah.
For these brands that have, different voices depending where they are. So, yeah, I think we've got a lot of schizophrenic brand voices out there. I don't think it's just Fairfax or NAB. Coming back to this study, what do you think the biggest issues are for people out there about this?
The biggest issue, so initially the biggest issue was consent, and whether people consented to this research. Now, there's the argument that there's one argument that you consent in accepting terms and conditions that reference that your data may be used for research, but that seems to have possibly been not debunked in a sense, but that Facebook's terms and conditions didn't change to include the research part until after this study.
Mm-hmm.
So people have said, you agree to the terms and conditions, and right or wrong with the 9,000, 14,000 words in the terms and conditions that nobody ever reads, there is a line that says research. And so some people said, technically, you have agreed. Whether that is informed consent or not to the study that they're doing is another question. But then somebody's saying now that the privacy policy changed to include that after this research, so that brings that into question. But the main ethical considerations that a lot of people are up in arms about is there's a lot of, and you would know this, there's a lot of ethical obligations around academic research, specifically involving people. Now, Facebook has this huge, almost 700,000 strong target group. What is their, a lot of the uproar is, what is their, how are they making sure that the people that they are affecting are, duty of care. That's what I was trying to think of. Duty of care.
I agree. I mean, what if they posted negative news to somebody who was vulnerable and they attempted suicide or said indeed successful at suicide? And what would that be? Oops, sorry, we were just doing some tests. I mean, it's pretty
exactly, and that's the first thing that I and a lot of other people went to. Not only at what point do you tip someone over the edge who is already vulnerable, but how would you even know that this had happened? So how would Facebook even know that they had possibly done this to someone? So somebody is severely depressed or mentally unstable, suddenly gets a constant feed of negative stuff just to see if it makes them more unhappy. So
okay.
that is the ethical consideration.
I am going to come in here a little bit as the devil's advocate, and just to stir the little pot just a little bit.
Yep.
I think that traditional media has been doing this for years. And I think that one of you often hear people saying, I don't watch the evening news anymore, it's negative, the newspaper's negative. Certainly, newspapers and media companies seem to have a left-wing bias or a right-wing bias, a political bias. They also show, in some, one way moral leadership through the articles and the way they phrase the articles that are presented to the community, and another way it's emotional manipulation by the way that they say, shock, horror, guess who was breastfeeding in a cafe, and all the value systems and judgment calls around that turning into news. Isn't it possible that all Facebook is doing is we finding social objects news out there from the community and feeding them back to the community with the same kind of agendas that media companies sort of kind of have? You just say no and we'll move on.
No,
You know what
fair
I'm saying, Dave? That they're not the only people to be manipulating communities out there.
No, that's true. But to a certain extent, you are aware of the choice that's in front of you. So you are aware that you can watch this news item or turn it off. So, for example, we've got the kids. Something about, Iraq comes on, you turn it off. You don't want the kids seeing people getting blown away, big guns, fires, explosions, and trying to explain to the kids why people are killing each other. So, and the same in newspapers, you open that up, you can choose, you have the option available in front of you to choose what you're going to consume or not consume. In Facebook, you don't have that choice. And they've always manipulated the algorithm. There's no doubt about that. But for the purpose of showing you, well, according to them, the purpose of showing you what is more relevant or of more interest to you. So I think it takes it a step too far to then test people's emotions like that by specifically tweaking it to manipulate them. You know what I mean? I think there's a difference there.
I'm not as convinced of the difference, and I think that for any kind of media consumption, there are the aware beings that you talk about that can turn things on and off, that can step back. So, and we talked earlier on about they see news which says what a great time all their friends are having, and they can just kind of go, oh, that's great, I'm happy for them, instead of thinking my life sucks. Or they see really bad news from friends, and instead of it making them depressed, it makes them feel positive. But you're almost choosing one set of rules for traditional media and another one for Facebook. On traditional media, people have the option to opt in and be emotionally secure and choose what news they'll consume and what they won't. And I would say to you that there are emotionally vulnerable people who get caught up on the 24/7 news channels and their mood's brought down. The world's going to hell in a handbasket. But then they're the same people who would be emotionally vulnerable on Facebook. I'm not 100%. You haven't got me 100% convinced, but I do understand where you're going with it, Dave.
How about this last point? This to throw a spanner in the works. So, apparently, initially, and it doesn't appear that now on the study, but initially on the study and the press release from Cornell University on the study, at the very bottom said this: the study was funded in part by the James S. McDonnell Foundation and the Army Research Office.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So,
and that is an interesting point, and I think it's even more interesting when you know that Peter Thiel, who's one of the original funders of Facebook, does a lot of co-op funding around Facebook development with the CIA's investment arm, the one that's run by that woman. I can't think of her name at the moment. And And I often joke at conferences, so the CIA thanks you for all the data that you're giving them. And I remember when Putin said, "Oh, Facebook is just a CIA platform," and everybody laughed at him. I was sort of sitting there going, "Ooh, maybe he's right." We can get into conspiracy theories here, and actually we should, because I don't think people are conspiracy theory minded enough. But are you surprised that the Army's funding this kind of social movement statistics?
Not surprised, disturbed. Now, Cornell put out a correction saying an earlier version was wrong. This study received no external funding, which begs the question, then why was the Army Research Office even mentioned in the first place? Anyway, but
I tell you what they found out was that when they went back and looked at their contract, it said you will be funded, we will receive the results, and you will, under Official Secrecies Act, never mention the fact that we were involved.
Yeah. So, and one of the initial things I thought when reading about this as well was not just the emotional vulnerability of people to negative content, so people who are, suffer severe depression or mental instability to get possibility to get tipped over the edge by receiving too much negative content, but the ability to manipulate populations as well. So if a certain tweak is applied to a certain population area, not just a broad base of users, how can that affect the mood of a city or a country when you target it at that level? And extrapolating that to the conspiracy theorist extremes, at what point can you incite violence and revolution?
Okay, here's an even better one. Let's say I was to target an inner west Sydney area,
yep,
and then tweak the news feed so everything that people saw was pro-Liberal Party of Australia, our right-wing party, and anti-Labor, which is our left-wing party. Could I actually shift on the fence people towards, nudge them in the direction of voting for the Liberal Party, or vice versa?
Yeah.
And I'm going to come back, though, to the fact that Rupert Murdoch et al. Have been manipulating communities for probably centuries now, given how old he is. But is anybody surprised that Facebook, you yourself said that Facebook was going for the media play, they wanted to be the media organisation. Chris Sard followed that up in last week's podcast with a very strong push to, Facebook as a media organisation. So are we surprised that they're not behaving in a kind of a media way? And don't tell me editors and Murdoch and stuff don't push agendas, because I won't believe you.
Oh no, they do. So, but everyone has agendas.
Just not everybody has their own media company.
Right.
If Facebook were to tweak things for instance, a political agenda, or to encourage a particular demographic to sign up for the army, or what else could they do? I mean, the marketing possibilities here are exciting and horrendous, because you could take Friday afternoon and make sure the news feed was full of alcohol feeds and take a kickback from the alcohol industry, because now your friends' status updates about wine o'clock and beer o'clock and are really would increase the sales of wine. In fact, you could probably go in for the Dry July this month, and force more alcohol-related news into the feed. It's it's scary, Dave. I'm scared. This is interesting. And here's the thing, okay? The government here in Australia is oblivious. They have regular meetings with Facebook and Google and probably with Twitter, although I'm not sure. But they seem to be taking advice from them rather than communicating with community managers in ensuring that the agenda is equal for everybody. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it would be like asking Rupert Murdoch to set the media laws for Australia.
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
Who else are they taking advice from? I don't think that. Anyway, I think we need to move on from this one. I completely agree that it's an important revelation. I think for some people, I mean, I've been watching the data and academic studies coming out of universities and Facebook and seeing how Facebook is offering up the database to academics, which has really interesting implications for Google, because Google is aggressively going after the education market by offering universities all the platforms so that they can collect the data of what students talk about on email and Google Docs and all that sort of stuff. So there's this big data fight at the moment between Google, who are trying to get into the universities to collect the data on the ground, and then Facebook, who's collecting this information and bringing it into academic studies. So be interested to see where that goes.
There's some really good questions in the sidebar there in the Q&A stuff.
I don't have them. I don't know why they're not coming in, but
I can't highlight
oh,
them.
you know what? I was on the chat one. What a silly girl I am. If I found out I was part of the study, I would feel violated. That was from Kerry J. Kerry,
Yeah.
you were part of the study, more than likely. I don't know. Brain priming has been researched in neuroscience for years. It comes across as funny. No question if it was good research. Oh, the good research question is an interesting one. I read a psychologist who said, according to a 1993 report, computers can't pick up sarcasm, which is fine because half the people I share my life with can't pick up my sarcasm either, which is why I have to do #sarcasm in real life, which is really tragic. And went on, and I nearly took the time to write a comment on his article. I think it was Psychology Today or something, which sort of said, semantic analysis has come some way since 1993, and, you know, if the comment is something like, congratulations, you wanker, computers are now able to tell that you're being sarcastic, not only because those two words are in proximity, but then because of the rest of the discussions around those tagged words, so that you can look at markers across the whole conversation and links coming in, links going out, stuff like that. So I don't know what else you might want to think about with the study, but like I said, I think there's a lot of issues in academic studies, not least that they normally have a really small group of like 24 uni students in first year and call that a typical focus group, and it's obviously not. What about you, Dave? What do you think of not the ethics of the study, but the practicalities of the study?
Well, I think we already discussed that earlier, that it's, it's an amazing data set to be able to work with, and great research to be able to access that kind of user base, and for that period of time, that huge number, and yeah, I mean, like I said, like it says, I think it is good research, in terms of what you can gain from the research. How it was done, not okay.
Yeah. Okay. I
didn't realize that First Dog on the I missed First Dog on the Moon yesterday. First Dog on the Moon cartoon.
Oh yeah, I see it sometimes.
Yeah, so there's a link there from Kerry, that yesterday's cartoon, is it yesterday? What is today? Yeah, today's the 3rd. So yesterday's cartoon was about this, about the Facebook research study. And she's got the link there in the Q&A sidebar there.
Okay.
So we can post that.
I just want to say I'm opening up. I'm just going to open up this Hangout for the last 15-20 minutes or so publicly. I can't actually do public, but I can say to my circles and extended circles. So if you don't get an invitation, let me know and I'll circle you. And your circles and extended circles, unable to invite public or extended circles. Okay, so just circles, invite. So if you've got a mic and a camera, I think we can have up to 10 people in. So 8 more. Is my maths right?
Yeah,
feel free to join us and people will pop in at the bottom and we can all look at the Q&A together. Gary Hayes has put up a link to the terms, facebook.com/legal/terms. So if you want to have a look and see, Kerry and others, how your data's being used, exploited, sold, have a look. I think people are naive. I mean, was it Coles or Woolworths that got caught recently selling all of our data globally for flybys?
I can't remember. But
yeah,
that's the thing.
Whoever it was, I apologise to the other one, but it was either everyday rewards or flybys. So every time you bought something, went to the supermarket, how often you bought, what brand of tampons you bought, whatever, all got sold. And
that's been going on for a long time as well. User data and email databases and things like that getting sold and traded between either marketers or spammers. So, that's happened. It's just whether you expect what you expect, I guess, out of certain organizations with your data.
Yeah.
And then, Gary's mentioned some of the points from that legal terms as well. So saying Facebook expects normal users to, and then in quotes, you will not collect users' content or information or otherwise access Facebook using automated means without our prior permission. And if you collect information from users, you will obtain their consent, make it clear you and not Facebook are the one collecting their information, and post a privacy policy explaining what info you collect and how you will use it. So those are 2 specific points from the legal terms link that Gary posted.
Okay, good.
And in answer to John Lilly, no, it's not unethical for Coca-Cola to collect data about where they sell more units, what sort of weather conditions, and after which good or bad news sells more units, because that's part of news and marketing as well, is getting stuff in front of people, and if they're associated with good news, then people are more inclined to their product or feel more affinity towards their product.
Okay.
So
but
Kerry,
I just want to say, I've invited Kerry J in, and she popped in for a moment, and hopefully she'll be back. But that would be good if she can come back in and say hello. Dave, just while we're waiting for Kerry, I want to talk about a little project that I've got going, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, goody. Let me go across and I'll just share this. So this is something called Eat, Pray, Tweet. Let me put that full screen. What I'm doing is taking a dozen people away to Bali for a social media retreat with organic food and well-being and lifestyle and yoga and all that sort of stuff. It's at eatpraytweet.com if you want to read more. Rather than just turning that into an ad for the whole thing, which I don't want to do, I just thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about work-life balance and lifestyle and well-being with social media? Because I think people see it as an add-on, or it's just, oh yeah, I do too much Facebook, or I have to do too much social media for work. But it's actually endemic, and there's a huge, I think, shift, and there needs to be more conversation around well-being and social media. And it's not a matter of self-control. Whatever, using Facebook, not using Facebook. For me, it has to do with, for a lot of organisations, companies, businesses, not-for-profits, government, they used to bought attention where they will go to a media organisation and say, here's some money, you've already earned the attention, can you put my press release, my new products, my competition, whatever, in front of your community? And the company, the media company says, ka-ching, that'll cost you, sure. And that's good, that model's the way that it's always been understood. In social media, the biggest issue, I think, is because you can't buy the attention, you've got to earn it. You have to do a lot of owned media as well as earned media. So you have to do a lot of content creation. You have to do a lot of found media where you go out and find interesting articles and share them. And so organizations are becoming their own media companies in order to deliver interesting content into their Facebook channel or Twitter channel or whatever, not just promotions. And it's the biggest question I'm asked is, how do I resource this? How do I keep earning attention? How do I make, how can I be on at 9:30 on a Monday night to make sure I capture the Q&A crowd who are talking about political issues in my in my area, and also make sure I'm on Saturday morning to collect those who are, I don't know, thinking about their local area or something going on, and also 9 to 5, so what I'm finding is there's a lot of really stressed, not just marketing but recruitment and customer service people who are having to deal with social media 24/7, don't have the tools or the resources. So that's what Eat Pray Tweet's about. It's about creating a lifestyle that's about connecting with, we go to temples and volcanoes in Bali, and we eat organic food and do healthy things like yoga in the morning. I'm just not sure I'm going to make it. And I guess it was, it was something I wanted to do. It's something that I thought would be fun to do. It's something I needed to do. How about you, Dave? Would you want to come to something like this?
I mean, it sounds very nice and relaxing. Certainly.
We do study social media as well. We look at automation tools, and we look at resourcing, and we look at measurement and analytics and strategies and stuff. It's not just lying by the pool with a pina colada.
That could keep you going with the stressful part for another 12 months maybe, if you just do that for a week. So you do come away then with actually outcomes that people, or hope to come away with outcomes that people can better manage that work-life social media balance. That's the plan, the idea.
That's the plan, because first of all, I'm shocked at the number of people who say they can't take a holiday this year. They can't justify a holiday. They run a small business. I can only take time off, the week between Christmas and New Year, because that's when my customers take time off. And that's number one. I think lots of marketing and PR people are really under that pressure of, oh, here's your full-time job, and by the way, we're just going to give you social media as well to do, and they don't know how to manage that time. And so, one of the things I've been able to do is get a lot of my social media down to half an hour a day. And I have to, because I teach from 9 till 5:30, and I take my students to lunch. So I don't get a chance to go on and do a lot of stuff during the day, and yet I have to be active during the day. So I set up things, schedule things, automation things. I have different tools to help me with that. But I also want people to walk away with what I want to walk away with. I'm only taking 12 people, okay? So this isn't a big conference. It's, I sent it out to the, to the rabble out there, my followers and stuff, and 12 of us will go away. It's not a lot. But I want to walk away with a better understanding of work-life balance. I want to know to get up in the morning and schedule half an hour, 20 minutes even, to do yoga, and how meditation in the afternoon of putting all the, getting the iPad and laptop off your lap when you're watching TV and turn the TV off and do a bit of meditation, how that can change and improve your life, about eating organically can help your life. So it's not just the social media workshops, which frankly anybody can come and do in Sydney with me, either at the university or my training rooms in the city, but take a week off. And if you can't justify a holiday, do this sort of, and I know people say I'd love to know more about social media but I don't have time, so this is like, just take a week and do it. I reckon they'll walk away with what they want to walk away with.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds...
anyway, I just thought I'd check it out there and see if anybody had any thoughts on Eat, Pray, Tweet. Do you meditate, Dave? Do you do yoga in the mornings?
No. I don't have time, Laurel.
See?
Yeah. So, there's lots of things that, I'd like to do and that sort of stuff, but I don't, you feel too busy, feel like you don't have time for, blogging or, doing podcasts or, stuff outside of work. So, for example, you've got to, and you do have to be able to make the time to do certain things. But there can be smarter ways to do things, like you're saying with automation and things like that. Sounds like you're advocating something like if this, then that, Laurel.
Yeah. How hard has it been for us to find the time on Thursdays to do this? I almost feel like the whole universe, certainly Sydney business area, conspires against us. There are some weeks where I set aside to write or something, and then somebody will come in and say, we've got a really interesting keynote, and we're going to fly you somewhere exotic and put you up, and it's on Thursday morning.
Right.
And I'm like, I can't do it. And I think I said to you the other week, I've been asked twice now to do morning TV about a wrap-up on social media, and it's on Thursday mornings. It's like, you have to learn to prioritize in every area of your life. This is important to me. Nothing else can impact this.
What you could do is take your laptop and tell them to give you a spare office or studio with Wi-Fi access, so you can do their morning TV and then sit in someone's office and do this and lock the door.
Do you know how bad the internet connection is at the television studios, even in Sydney?
No, I do
They're
not.
shocking. Really shocking. They don't have the bandwidth. I think they're just cutting costs. Probably shouldn't say that, but no, it's really bad. Cameron, did you hear the new survey results yesterday that the news media is only trusted by 25% of the Australian population?
I did not hear
I'm wondering who the 25% are. How could we not look at Dave? Look at that face. How could we not look at Dave and trust him? You're the face of Australian media. They should make you the pin-up for it.
Nothing but, trustworthy, good information from me. No, I didn't see that. So, Cameron, I assume that's not related to the recent trustworthiness profession, which I know was also around in the last few days, I think, which comes out every year or whatever, and journalists are, again, down the bottom with, car salesmen and things like that. So, no, I didn't hear that. But, doesn't surprise me, really. Which is unfortunate that, people don't trust the news media.
We don't trust anybody that holds the gate, that is the gatekeeper.
Mm.
And, one thing I often look at is how communities of interest choose their key influencers. And there's always a filtering process. So if you want to become a politician, you can't just put your hand up and say, me, I'll be the Prime Minister of Australia. You have to go through all the community's filtering systems. So you have to be, have a platform and be voted in locally, and then your party has to pre-select you, and then you have to, there's a ladder to climb. And it's the same with being an academic. I can't just choose to be the professor at the head of blah blah department. I have to publish papers and finish a degree and postgraduate degrees and do the whole filtering system that community of interest stipulates is part of the ritual of becoming a key influencer. And I wonder if there is something that could be done much more. Frankly, I don't think industry organisations really understand that they're communities of interest managers. And so industry organisations could do a lot more to help with transparency, authenticity, trustworthiness by making sure those rituals are there. Because as much as we might bag perhaps politicians and academia and anything else, even winning, being a prize-winning author, you not only had to write the book, you had to finish the book, you had to submit it, it had to be edited, it then had to be, somebody had to buy those and to sell in shops, so you had to go through that whole process. Then you had to be submitted to awards, win awards, and then everybody understands the filtering process. So almost every aspect of key influencer life, there is a filtering process. You have to know what that is. Is there something that could be done in the community to help build the trustworthiness through a ritual or rite of passage? And maybe they're already there, Dave, and we just don't fully use them. I don't know, the CV of the person. There's a lot of celebrity culture that's starting to build up around journalists and building their trustworthiness by knowing their politics and their opinions. Yep. For good or for bad. I don't know, maybe there's something else we could do. What do you think?
In terms of trustworthiness of journalists or news media, because there is certainly a difference. Where people have a personal connection to journalists in a media organisation, they increase trustworthiness of that journalist because they have a personal connection. That doesn't necessarily equate to trustworthiness in news media and a news media organisation as a whole.
Okay. So what you're saying is, and I think we've seen this, is that those journalists that are on Twitter and Facebook and stuff, they seem to get a more of a following and more recognition and trustworthiness than maybe those that aren't.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. So,
hey, Kerry, come back. I was just about to introduce you. Where's she gone?
Hello.
Oh, you're all black.
I'm trying.
Okay. If you go up to the cog at the top of the page, there's an option there for which camera you use. So I don't know if you're changing your camera around or something, but have a look there and then we'll bring you in. But in the meantime,
we can hear you.
We can hear you. How are you, Kerry? Kerry J?
Please hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can, yes.
How are you?
I've been enjoying the discussion very much, just lurking.
Oh, that's good. By the way, you flashed in then and then you went. If you've got a lot of windows open, have a think about closing some of them, because sometimes that can help with your bandwidth. For anybody overseas, this is classic Australia, where we almost got an NBN, National Broadband Network, and then we didn't. So, are you in an office, Kerry?
I am, yes.
Cool. And where are your colleagues? Did you shoo them out of the room?
No, I have one that's on a webinar, and I'm sort of blocking her behind me, and
okay.
The others are across the divide.
Okay, that's cool. Are you tell us something about yourself. What's interesting about Kerry?
Well, I chivvy academics to get their courses online. So I'm both popular and unpopular, depending on who you are.
Are you
I
talking about
enjoy.
big, massively online open courses, whatever it's called, or are you talking about just online courses in general?
I help facilitators develop online learning for students. So whether they use a blended learning model or fully online. So I work with a
Okay.
registered training organization, but I'll soon be working with the University of South Australia.
Oh, that's right. You're leaving to go and work with them, aren't you? That's exciting.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. What about you, Dave? Have you looked at any online courses around journalism,
Um,
media? That
I
night school has a open course for anybody who wants to do journalism or news media and social media courses. That's kind of cool.
yeah, I've
Do you
looked
know
at a few.
Night something?
The Night Foundation.
That's them.
Uh, John S. Knight. Anyway, so I have looked at some in the past, but not recently. But there is a lot of online training you can do for journalism stuff, which is really good. Whether it's traditional journalism training,
Yep.
just in terms of traditional interviewing skills, writing skills, things like that, through to broadcast, video, but also then digital and social media with journalism, stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff available out there, which is really good.
Okay. So I've got a question for you guys out there in watching Visitorland or for Kerry. Um, I really think universities are under threat. I've worked at universities now since late 80s, and I don't think they understand that they are the next ones to be pushed off the cliff, a la media. And all the arguments I hear from, I work with vice chancellors groups and stuff like that. Oh, you don't understand, there's this branding around the university where people want to have their degree from a university and they want to, all the arguments they have remind me of media saying social media will never take off and people won't trust social media or blogs because we're the trusted source and we're this and we're that. And I think they're all just kidding themselves if they don't get online and if they don't open up and if they don't go into nano tasks rather than these big package deals that they try and sell. I think they're in a really difficult position. What do you think, Kerry?
I think that there is a value proposition that people aren't recognizing, and I think that in terms of both what traditional media or universities have to offer. For instance, I don't think the general public's information literacy skills are quite up to scratch yet. I think with the number of, and I say this as a 49-year-old woman, with the number of middle-aged people getting online, there's a certain naivete that they have online that they don't have when they approach the use of traditional media. For instance, they don't ask themselves questions about accountability and credibility and the stake a particular person might have in making them think a certain way. So I think traditional media is selling themselves short in some ways by not selling the value proposition they have, which is that at least some of them, Fox News accepted, have a certain stake in being credible and unbiased and impartial. So I
Do
think
you really
they
think we
haven't.
want unbiased and impartial? Do you really think that's what
I,
gets... And I
I,
agree, it's about the literacy and understanding of the audience out there, but I don't see a lot of take-up on impartial.
Well, it's hard to be impartial. I mean, I was a news journalist myself. I've been a print journalist and I've been a broadcast journalist for an NBC affiliate over in the States. And of course, there's a certain bias when you're putting a newscast together. You're discriminating. You're making decisions as you go in order to put together a newscast. So there's no such thing really as an impartial story. I mean, nobody just wants a bunch of data puked at them. They want some context and they want an understanding. But I also
So
think that
I've got a question for you then. Do you think it's
Mhm.
possible that news journalism is not impartial, and
Of
that
course.
social media is impartial? And the only reason I want to discriminate between the two is that traditional media is product journalism. So you make all these selections, you do the editing and the curating, and then you give this finished product to the audience and have them accepted as being impartial, which of course it's not. Process journalism is where a blogger puts something up and somebody fights it and somebody else argues and they come backwards and forwards with all the different points of view, including what grammar you should or shouldn't have used. And then from that process we get the 360-degree view. So it's less impartial and more complete, holistic view.
See,
Is
I
there an
don't think of
argument
that as
there?
journalism. No, I don't think that's journalism. I think that's op-ed, and I think op-ed has a role. But I don't think it's journalism.
So
I
linking
think
to
the model
Facebook terms and conditions is an opinion rather than part of the process of journalism. Like that's what happened today in the webinar. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's journalism. I think that the model for journalism in future is going to be a series of, it's going to be people linking to specialists. Specialists on the ground are going to be covering what they can cover, and people will sort of suck that in and repackage it for their specific audience as they see fit. I think large newsrooms are dead. They're unsupportable by ad revenue. They still haven't found a viable business model for it. But
So
I would
the
really
fact that
hate
I
to
can go
see
and read the blog
journalism
of the
evolve
Iranian
into.
president, and I can read the blog of the EU president, and I can read the blog of the US president. I can't read the blog of the Australian president and prime minister, but that's neither here nor there. The fact that I can go to this original source, that I can read academics' blogs, and I can see the original research, and isn't that part of a process? Dave, what do you think of this process
I think
product?
you're smarter than the average bear, though, Lauren, and you've got to remember that.
And
I agree, and maybe the future of education is teaching people how to use all these different resources. But anyway, Dave, what do you think?
well, you also have to remember that I think there's a difference between impartiality and bias in the sense that there are certain organizations that would claim impartiality, but the simple fact of doing that leads other people or organizations from a different perspective to claim that that impartiality is biased against them. So you have there's facts and then there's disputed facts. There's science and there's disputed science. So you can claim to be impartial and be impartial and report the facts or equal sides of an argument and have other people who completely disagree with you or are biased in a completely opposite direction say that is a biased view because it doesn't agree with another view. So and also to the point of taking in different social media feeds or a conglomeration of the whole across social media and being able to read, a president's blog and something else. You also have to take that with a grain of salt as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Have people who are in a position to distill and dissect that and give the information or give what you would hope to be a closer representation of the truth or to highlight the inaccuracies. So, for example, someone in Russia may read Barack Obama's blog and say that is completely full of untruths about us, and anyone in the West might read a blog, if he had one, of Vladimir Putin and think that is insanity. Like, that is, you cannot take that as it is. So,
But this is the thing. This is the thing that I'm talking about. We don't do that. We do process journalism. We read these things and then we argue them, and we insist that if people are going to come in with an emotional, non-impartial view, that they back it up. So they run off and they find statistics and links and quotes, and they have a rare old time creating this content. I'm always, me, I like stirring the pot, and I just think that it's an interesting argument for the future. Kerry, do you focus your courses, your work in...
journalism?
Go on, Dave. Sorry, what was that?
For the future of journalism and the future of media, that linking and sources and all of that is not independent of the journalism. So,
yes,
in a newspaper or broadcast, you may only be able to present the text or the vision and perhaps an infographic or something like that. And that is what you are limited to in presenting your story as an argument for truth. But online, there should be the same rigor given to online news as, for example, an academic blogger or a political blogger who has more impact or influence than some mainstream news organizations has that trust, because they can argue and display sources and link material to their argument that builds up that trustworthiness. I have to go to work.
Again,
I have to go to work.
If they're a shock jock blogger, then you're kind of stuck with the fact that they're going to be, an Andrew Bolt or Carl Sanderlands, and they'll throw out whatever they want. If you're an education blogger, in the sense that you've got an education voice, or you want to do an awareness blog, then you need to, I often say bloggers are paid in trust. They're not paid in money, they're paid in trust and reputation, and they don't risk that easily by putting up rubbish, unless they're going for a really strong opinion voice and rants, a ranty blogger, but normally they're paid in reputation and trust. Just one last, can we just go to one last question, because we do need to finish up. It's 11:15. I know we started a little bit late, but this is a question for Kerry. Kerry, what did you think of the Facebook emotion manipulation story, the emotion contagion story?
I thought it was disgusting. I thought that being someone, the RTO I work with deals in human services training, and they're attached to a practice. So I have a lot of colleagues who deal with people with mental health issues and those sorts of things, and I found it incredibly irresponsible, I think, is the first phrase I'd come up with. Secondly, I think, as I mentioned in the questions, from traditional news, we have an expectation that we have no voice, we have no say. We are passive recipients of what's going on. When you are on a channel that gives you an illusion of control, where you can ignore people, where you can delete feeds, where you can say, don't show me ads from this advertiser, and then they, regardless of your choices, force information on you that you might otherwise have avoided, thinking you had that illusion of choice. I just think I think that's questionable would be the kindest word I could use. Yeah.
I've just put your comment from the chat stream up as well. I agree. I think if I was to make an ethical leap here, it's quite a big leap. I just want to point out, this is what marketing does, is it makes you feel particular ways. And no, you don't get to opt in. If you're sitting in a traffic jam and there's billboards all around you of, people, terrible situations with Amnesty International slapped onto the photo, or fantastic, gamble and win lots of money and you can have this beachside resort, then you're being emotionally manipulated this is what marketing is, and council have been selling off public spaces like bus shelters and fences in local areas forever. And I don't know.
But you see, the thing is, you come to expect it, and you can brace yourself for those things. You know you don't have a choice. When you're in a space where you know you don't have a choice, you can act in a certain way. You can prepare yourself in a certain way. But when you're in a space where you think you have choices, to me it would be like somebody slowly redecorating my house, or inserting subliminal messages into my playlist.
I'm coming over with tomorrow, Kerry. And
but
by
you
the
know
way,
what I mean? I mean,
first point. This absolutely goes to your first point about digital literacy of the generation coming through now, because there's, I've forgotten the actual statistics, but that whole thing that anybody who's been born after the 1980s has seen X million billion ads and has had 3 trillion pieces of marketing information thrown at them before they were 15, and you kind of go, wow, how's that going to impact them? But I think that they are learning, because they're digital natives, they're learning that literacy, and
I don't think
are
they're
they
learning
learning it fast enough?
No, I don't. But interestingly enough, they did a smoking cessation study recently where they took 2 groups of kids. One group of kids, they did the old-fashioned traditional, basically you're going to die, here's what your lungs are going to look like, blah, blah, blah. The other ones, they did communications literacy with them. They explained the strategies behind cigarette advertisements, and when they're shown in movies, what that's supposed to make you feel and make you do, and how people are manipulated. And they used, I guess, teenagers in year 10 or 11, so about 16 or so, right at the point where they decide whether they're going to be, smokers for the long term or not. And the group that had the non-traditional education that learned about marketing literacy actually had a lower take-up rate of smoking than the other ones. So I think we need to do more, and we need to introduce information literacy and digital literacy earlier in kids' education. I think as young as first grade.
The Guru and Transfer on the ABC, which is the one that looks at all the ads and what goes on behind the ads. Yeah. We should make that mandatory viewing with high schools. I do also want to point out, though, that teenagers in that age group have that's not me, that's not my problem. We've done campaigns around raising awareness of predators online and stuff like that. And every time you show a girl crying in a corner, the kids laugh. She's an idiot. Look at her. What a loser. And it's shocking, but you realize that fear-based advertising, they haven't bought the story. They just don't buy fear-based marketing.
I've got to sign off.
Okay. See you, Dave. We
nice
just finished
the video.
Lovely as always. If you can join us next week and you've got an internet connection, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
See you and thank you. And Kerry and I will wrap up and then we'll finish up in the next couple of minutes. So have a lovely week moving to Sydney.
You. Cheers.
See you, Dale.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like they say, not me, not my problem. They're just losers. And then if you show them something aspirational, like I think we did one with girls who reported in the predator and he was arrested and they were patting each other on the back. That the girls and the guys go, woohoo, that's me. I'm a superhero in my own mind and I win, these kind of things. So I'm always a little wary of fear-based advertising with kids. They just laugh at it. They don't think it's not them, They won't get cancer. Their lungs won't look like that. They're going to live forever.
I just spent 9 months working with a group of 10 consultants between the age of 12 and 17 to design an awareness video for gaming, kids who game too much. Yeah. And the name of it's Take Control. It's on the Relationship South Australia website. I'll do a little plug. There's a sub-site in the video, so please check it out. But the kids wrote and produced the video. It's rasa.org.au
/RASA?
Yep.
Okay.
.org.au/take control.
Take control. See, I like
so
take
the kids
control.
design
That's
that.
marketing that says,
and that's what they said.
Mm.
That's what they said. They said fear-based stuff doesn't work for us. We actually gave them a sort of a mini course in health promotions, campaign, and communications. And
Okay.
they also schooled us quite a lot too. And all the campaigns that were aimed at them, they all had that attitude. You know, the fear-based stuff. They went, not we laugh at that, we sneer at you, but if there's a little bit of humor in it, and then you slip in the message, they're a lot
Yeah.
more likely to take notice. So they wrote the video, and they roped in volunteers for the video, and they were just fantastic. So yeah, check it out. These are kids who really, they taught us about marketing. They introduced us to Reddit. They did all sorts of great things online. So, and I think the
I
video
mean,
is
that's
fantastic.
awesome. I remember there was a campaign that was done by one of the makeup companies, and and really what they ended up with was teenage girls roping in teenage boys to target to their own target demographic. And you cannot get a purer voice, than the vox pop from within that marketing segment, talking to that marketing segment. Anything else sounds like grown-ups pretending to be teenagers.
And they are very scornful of that too. Like they said, when I wrote the website,
Everybody is.
one of the parents questioned me as to the language I use, because I use just a very bloggy sort of conversational tone. But one of the grown-ups said, "Well, I think it should be more aimed at kids," and all the kids jumped in and said, "She's talking to us like she respects us," and we like
Yes.
that.
Yep.
If she tries to write like she's down with the young people, she's hip, she knows where it's at. I said we'd consider an idiot.
Yeah. In some of my communities, the ones with teenagers, I never pretend that I'm one of them. And they don't want that. They want a community manager. They don't want another teenager. And sometimes I have to write, I don't understand what you just wrote. So can someone tell me if it's negative and I should ban them, or if it's positive and I should give them one of the rewards? And then they all try and con me and, joke around, but, I never go, yeah, I understand all this stuff. And it's not going to work anytime soon. All right. Kerry, lovely for you to join us today. I wish it was a little bit earlier and then we could have had some more time with you, but I need to finish up as well. Dave's in the middle of moving from Queensland to Sydney. Where are you based again? I don't remember. Adelaide, isn't it?
Adelaide. Yeah,
Yeah,
Adelaide.
that's right, because I'm an Adelaide girl as well.
That's right.
And he's moving down to Sydney, and that's why all the shelves behind him were empty. And we're off looking at houses today as well, and up here in currently sunny Blue Mountains. It was snowing yesterday. I was playing in the
Yeah,
snow.
I've been enjoying watching your photos
Yeah,
on
I was
Facebook.
throwing snowballs around on Facebook. And wouldn't that be interesting? Would Facebook pick that up and send it into people's stream to make them feel? What would people feel? It's such a
They want to buy winter
huge
clothes.
thing. Huge thing. Facebook and their algorithm. No wonder Google's, pushing Google Plus, and any hint that they back off from Google Plus, they can't.
No, they
cannot.
can't. No, they can't have another failure on their hands.
No, and if they lose all that big data, and they have to go back to declarative keyword-based ads, where you search what people
Yeah.
actually, rather than what their profiles say about them, they can kiss that advertising revenue goodbye. I mean, Dave's not here, but we could say to him anyway. Media is already kissing that revenue goodbye, but Google will too. Anyway, thank you, love.
Thank you. Back at ya.
Yeah, and you be
Always
good,
lovely
and we'll
talking
see
to
you
you.
next week maybe. See you, darling. Bye
I
bye.
hope so. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Social Media Business Podcast. This week we talked about the Facebook Emotion Contagion study and how Facebook's manipulating the emotions of the vulnerable, and also maybe for political gain, whatever, whether they are or not. I also talked briefly about Eat, Pray, Tweet in Bali, and about how I think lifestyle and well-being is going to be a big issue in the future with this ambient, always-on social networking thing that's been happening now for a few years, but is really starting to take a toll. And we were joined by Kerry, who talked about education and her former journalism self and product versus process journalism, that sort of thing. If you'd like to join us next week, I'll put it up on Google Plus events again. If you're getting notifications that you don't want, make sure you add me to a circle where the notifications are either turned off or muted of some kind. And also make sure your calendar doesn't say auto add any events that I'm invited to. Make sure you say only the ones I click I'm going to get added to my calendar. That'll help a lot if you're using Google Calendar or something like that. So follow me on Twitter. I'm Silk Charm, Google Plus Laurel Papworth, Facebook, whatever. I don't know, Instagram, whatever. I'm on all of them. But my main ones are Twitter, Google Plus, and Facebook. And I'll see you next week. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you'd like to join us, let me know, because I'd love to ping you and bring you in. Okay, thanks, dears. Bye.